this? I said, that's sunset at the beach.
Wow.
She said, that's what it looks like?
She says, does it really look like that?
I said, yeah. She said, can you take me to see that? I mean, I could have cried. Like, what? We live in Naples.
Like giving them like opportunities to, we saw like talk about like expanding their horizons, like so they understand that there's more out there.
I feel like it's kind of fulfilling that mission of Soup Soul and Salvation kind of model. I'm really, really glad that we did it this way.
We have today on Mission Moment, Captains Ben and Annie Bridges. And so it's a great pleasure to talk with you guys. Want to check in first and see how you guys are doing. We see the picture of your girls behind you. And how is the family? How are things going? Oh, you're missing one of them. So
she's up higher.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you've chosen favorites or something.
Like the Trinity.
Gotcha. Anyway, well, how's the family? How are you guys doing?
Doing well. As can be expected, you know, Christmas and COVID and all that good stuff. But things are moving along. Girls are doing great, getting bigger every day, trying to figure out virtual school and all that stuff. But
so tell us about school, though. I mean, I remember right when COVID happened, you guys were trying to balance the kids and all that stuff. Is this year better? Is the fall kind of helped you figure out a little bit of a balance? It's
been different for sure. Some ways better, some ways I think harder.
I think it's been better.
Yeah, I think for the most part. You know, when COVID first hit back in the spring,
yeah.
You know, they shut all of our schools down. Actually, we were on spring break when they decided for our county to shut down schools when they came back, and the kids never went back. So that was beginning of March, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, obviously there was a long time where we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with our girls specifically, and then with, you know, some of the other core kids. And so eventually, after a while, we realized that there was a lot of our core kids that were going to need some attention that they weren't getting at home.
Like they either didn't have internet, so they weren't able to access their computer to do their assignments, or they weren't able to do it on their own for whatever reason.
Yeah, a lot of different dynamics at play. Like Annie said, we've got two sisters, and we can talk about them a little bit more later, you know, who are renting one room in a mobile home at which the landlord won't allow them access to the internet. And so they clearly were not able to accomplish their virtual schooling there at home. Had a couple of the kids who basically, you know, were at home all day by themselves with parents through no fault of their own, you know, have to work their two jobs and have to leave the kids at home, trusting that a 10-year-old boy is going to sit in front of the computer all day and do all his math work, right. Which obviously just is unrealistic. So for all those different reasons, we made the decision to bring a handful of our kids back in the spring here, and kind of just shifted gears with our ministry team. This was back when Lieutenant Naldine was with us, and she really became that live-in tutor for those kids and spent a lot of time learning how to do math. And
7th grade math is hard.
Physical science and language arts, and learning how the proper format for an essay and all that kind of stuff. So
would you be able to give us just a slight rundown of what does that look like now?
So now it looks different than it did in the spring. What we decided to do when the kids went back to school, it felt very disorganized in our county. We weren't sure if they were going to open and then close again. And then it felt like a lot of the work they were giving them was just busy work. So we made the decision for ourselves to put our kids, enroll them in Florida virtual school. And then we have 12 students that are also enrolled in Florida virtual school. We opened it up to our core kids. So there was kind of talk about the possibility of expanding if school shut down again. But at the beginning, we just set for 12 kids. So they come in Monday through Friday from 9 to 2:30. They log into virtual school. We have a full-time paid teacher that we have in the room with them, as well as myself. And then we have since COVID started, we have a core ministries associate that started as well, who's amazing. And she is also relearning math and civics and all that with all of us. So the kids are just doing assignments online. And then what we wanted is for them to not be isolated, but to still be safe. So they have electives that are taught by our youth center staff. So we have music, we have engineering, we do Bible elective with them, and then they have PE as well. So they have electives in the afternoons. They have a lunchtime that's all together at the same time, and then they also have a recess time that's all together. So that way they have like a little bit of normalcy. They're able to, still be around other kids. And it's been really good for our kids. We've seen a lot of growth. I mean, any kid that gets that kind of individual attention and tutoring, but especially for our English language learner kids, when you're working in those Haitian Hispanic communities, I mean, it takes a lot to get your foot in the door. And so the shifting is hard.
Yeah.
But like I said, I know like EB will know like what a big deal it is for these parents to put me on a guardian.
That's a big deal.
Like,
cause I'm like, I don't know each one of those parents, but them just taking that step, or like the fact that they have a comfort for them to be in your building during the day and not at home shows the trust and the faith that they have in you. Just because I'm just thinking of just parents who I know, some of them will be more okay with their kids staying at home, and you just get the word of, there's food in the fridge. Don't open the door for nobody. Anybody who needs to walk in this door, they should have a key.
Right.
Don't call nobody. Don't pick up the phone, all of those things. But the fact that they're okay with them going to the core or getting picked up and dropped off during the morning, I would say morning hours, is like, that's a big deal.
We had one girl that Lieutenant Oldine really figured out at the beginning of COVID, like, this girl does not speak English. And we didn't even really realize it because she's just really quiet and sweet. And she'll say, and you just think like, do you understand me? Okay. And so then school was doing the same thing with 28 kids in your class. You're not going to be able to really zone in on this child that's not a behavior issue, but is clearly struggling, making C's and D's, and receiving really minimal support. So especially this particular girl who's from the family Ben was telling you about, we wanted them to come to our school, and she's making all A's.
Wow, praise the Lord.
And she's doing really, really well. And we're hoping, sometimes you feel helpless and what you can do, and you can't do it for all the kids, but this is a way we can bridge that gap of the opportunities that other kids get that she would never be able to have. And so we're hoping that this helps her in her future education by just having this year of really intensive tutoring and help.
You had some of the resources in place. I mean, you have kind of childcare, and then you have the after school programming with the Cohen Center. And so you have some of those resources in place. Effectively, did all of them just kind of come together to do it? Or is this something new or a hybrid? What's happening there? I mean, especially if some core are going, I have Sunday school rooms, I can do that. And maybe they can, but this is a little different too. So speaking to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a little bit of both. It's kind of a hybrid. So, we certainly had kind of the framework already in place that made it easier for us to transition and pivot, in this direction. But I will say, for our CMA, who just coincidentally came on board during this time of COVID, she certainly wasn't anticipating becoming, a full-time tutor, for her first 6 months in the job, but she was willing to do that. And we saw that need. And so she was able to jump into that role along with Annie.
Because our program schedule is not what it was.
Right.
So this is a new program that we can do. We put our energy, we're not really doing traditional sunbeams and all, things that she would really normally be helping with. And really a lot of what I do is program related, and, women's auxiliary, even Angel Tree is looking different. So our attention is not being pulled in all these different directions. So we were able to really focus.
Yeah. I think it's a twofold thing, right? It's the capacity, because we have the resources and the framework to be able to do something like this, but then it's also the priority, right? We talk about all the time, like, you prioritize things that you care about or you think that are important. And for us, we already had that child and family development kind of structure in place with our child development center, which is kids 1 to 5, and then our youth center, which is elementary and middle school ages. We already had that kind of in place. And so clearly that priority kind of rose to the top for us in terms of what we thought we could do most effectively for the community and for our kids. So going back to the spring, we shut down our daycare and our youth center for just a few weeks, right when that first wave really hit and like everything was shutting down, and we didn't really know what things were going to look like. And then when we began to reopen, we first looked at potentially opening for first responders, those essential workers that were mandated to go back to work. We actually did open our child development center for some of them and had a few come in at that point. And then slowly, as the summer approached, we progressively expanded a little bit more to what we felt like we could do safely, keeping kids contained in individual classes, that sort of thing.
The nice thing is, too, the schools gave them all computers, so you don't even have to have – we do have a computer lab at our youth center, but you didn't even have to have that because they all had laptop computers they could work on.
And then one big decision we were trying to wrestle with was, are we going to do summer day camp? Because that's such a big part of our youth center program. Generally we would have about 120 kids here every day during the summer for those 6 to 8 weeks. And so we figured out a way we could do it safely and ended up actually having 11 weeks of day camp.
Because they kept pushing the school starting.
Now we only had 80 kids, right? So we were able to do it.
It was
60 kids, which was more, we could do more safely, but what generally was 6 to 8 weeks turned into 11 weeks of day camp. And so our staff really went through the grind and were really fantastic this summer.
Yeah, definitely. And even with that 60, I can only imagine what it did for those 60 kids and the staff to be able to, I don't want to say get back to normal, but to have some form of community and to avoid some isolation or being at home alone.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we were really worried because typically our summer day camp, thanks to Tanya Stickney, looks like a lot of field trips just to get the kids out of the building so you're not going stir crazy. We're typically taking at least the kids get out of the building once a day, all of the kids, typically. And so we were worried because we weren't going to be able to do that this year. But the kids were really just so happy to not be at home that they were fine. And what we did instead is we brought field trips to us. And we've been doing that as well in our after school program. And so instead of going to somewhere, we had a group, we had a couple of like animal shows come in. We had a petting zoo come in that we could do outside. We did, there's a group that trains golden retrievers for veterans and especially with, specifically with disabilities as service dogs. And so they came in once a week and brought golden retriever puppies for us to play with. Which was awesome. So it actually it really ended up being fine. The kids were fine. They didn't miss being out at all because they were so happy to have some kind of structure and do something.
Who's all helping with this process? Sounds like a lot going on.
Well, when we first started, we had in our mind that we were going to just send them all to the computer and they were going to just do their work all day and that was going to be it. But we learned pretty quickly that it's a lot more involved than that, which is fine. But we didn't, to be honest, it's a lot more work than we thought it was going to be. That's just, being honest. But so we have a full-time teacher that's there, all day with them, helping them make sure they keep up with their daily schedules, checking their work before they turn it in, communicating with teachers and things like that. Then we have the CMA who really is focused on the middle school kids. I'm over there focused mostly on the elementary school kids. And then we have we had our car rally a couple weekends ago and a lady toured the youth center and heard what we were doing. And so she started last week. She's coming in for a couple hours a day to sit with one kid. So she comes 4 hours every Thursday. We have another lady that's through our Latchkey League that was like a professor at a university for math, which is where we all are deficient.
Wow.
So she comes in and tutors our kids in math, which is nice because, again, 7th grade math is really hard. There was one night when we Lieutenant Deshawn Dupree, who's here with us, Sarah, who's our CMA, and this 6th grade girl were sitting in the room for about an hour trying to figure out how to do a math problem. We were FaceTiming anybody we knew that was good with math. We were trying to like just look up the answer so we could figure it out. We were, anyway.
But yeah, I think, and like Annie's saying, you know, there have been, you know, a lot of people that come around us, and I think there's a couple really neat stories. I think even going back to the spring with the girl that we were talking about earlier that we recognized was really deficient in English. We had another volunteer from our Latchkey League who was willing to come in once a week. Actually, I think she ended up coming in a couple of days a week during our day camp, and would pull this girl out. And really, you know, this girl's a middle school student. And she went back to the basics. She would come,
Reading,
she made
phonics.
flashcards for her, and she would come in talking about words, phonics, all these, you know, these sorts of things. And so being able to connect her with this young girl who, you know, came here from Haiti less than a year ago, who doesn't speak English, and see how those can come together. I think it was really a special time for our volunteer to kind of get that personal connection.
That was a really special experience, I think, for both of them. And they loved, like at the end, she printed her little pictures of both of them that they took together, and that was sweet. So they formed a bond, which was nice.
What you have effectively is you have a school. Are you all connected with the public school system, or to a homeschool system, or a charter school? Are you just kind of on your own, or are you effectively all day tutors for people wherever they're attending school?
So it depends on which one you're talking about. So during the day, we are all enrolled in Florida Virtual School, which is available to any child in the state of Florida for free. Now, to do that, you have to unenroll your child from the public school system and declare them homeschool, which was a little scary. It's like one thing when you're doing it with your own kids, but like convincing or just talking to other parents, and EB knows especially Haitian parents are so, you know, school is really, really important to that culture. And so I was terrified to, you know, like, 'cause what if it goes wrong or it's not good, but Florida Virtual has been around for forever. So all those kids are in virtual school. And then after school, we have our after school program, which is essentially a time for tutoring, homework, and then education, extra education, free time. And then we have, you know, the normal things that happen in our youth center.
Yeah, so our day looks like the small learning pod that's there for their virtual school in the day. And then when our county school is let out, that's when our buses start to bring the other kids. So I think we're up to about 80 kids total now in our after school program. So these are kids that are in brick and mortar schools and then are still coming to us after school for the after school program. So there is some loose affiliation with the county in those regards. You know, we're obviously staying connected with all of the schools that come to us, but then for our learning pod, they are essentially homeschool children that are engaging in their virtual learning, you know, in our learning center.
But again, like just providing those kids who never have an option to go to homeschool.
Right.
You know, which it is it's a better learning environment only because it's one-on-one individual work.
Yeah. And one of the things Annie's, you know, always really intentional about, especially with our kids, is to making sure that they're like
what he's about to say about me,
exposed to the world at large, like not just their home. They go to school, they go home, they go to school.
Hey, you're learning. That's the 3 L's in our language. That's all we know.
You know, taking kids to a restaurant, like they like teaching them how to order food at a restaurant, or like
that's not common.
Like we took kids to the beach that I lived in Naples.
Oh my gosh, you guys, these kids, she brought her little computer from school and she was like, "What is this?" I said, "That's a sunset at the beach." She said, "That's what it looks like?"
She says, "Does it really look like that?"
I said, "Yeah." She said, "Can you take me to see that?" I was like, yeah, right now.
We're surrounded by it.
I'm about to text you a picture of them at the beach. I mean, I could have cried. Like, what? We live in Naples. You know?
Like giving them like opportunities to, we saw like talk about like expanding their horizons, like so they understand that there's more out there.
You guys, you guys are a pathway to hope. I mean, that's what you're doing. With the ministry of teaching them and helping them with school, with allowing parents to keep working and stay after it, and sharing with them the love of God. You are the pathway of hope, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's the real thing. I mean, God bless you guys for real.
And these, I
Yeah.
mean, I know everybody say this about their own kids, but these kids have such potential. I mean,
Yeah.
they're so
No,
smart.
they do. And like, even from just when you was talking about helping them out with like their education stuff, and I know right now it's just like the elementary and the middle school kids, but I'm like, you guys are helping people literally. And I know Major's talked about Pathway of Hope, but you're breaking down barriers that just basically they wouldn't even know it existed. Like some of them, like those who are like, and you deal with them day in and day out, but some of those kids who are going from middle school to high school are already more educated than some of their parents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for
And that's
sure.
part of what we talk about with Pathway of Hope, right? Trying to break that intergenerational
Right.
cycle of poverty, where like some of them, like just through their education, is already one step above what the
Right.
past
Right.
generation was. And like I know more so of the goals is like graduate high school, go to college, or get a trade and get a good job, and
Right.
be financially sustainable, give back, do all these things. But just those little steps, where I'm sure one of those kids are probably thinking like, I graduated high school, or I'm on the verge of graduating high school.
Right.
We have the capacity and the ability here to be so hopeful with the programs that we have. You talked about going other places who just like just the weight of the work that they were doing can sometimes feel so
Because
stifling
you're dealing
and
with like
oppressive.
addiction, you're dealing with homelessness, you're dealing with people that already have the problems, and you're trying to repair.
Can sometimes, even as
like,
leaders, feel like just oppressing and like debilitating because
Mm.
you're always trying to solve problems. Whereas here, we're on the front end of that. And so we have the opportunity to be more hopeful and, push these kids, like you're saying, to break out of that and to bring these families, so that we're not trying to fix the back end.
right.
We're trying to put, position them so that they can move forward,
So it's nice because if you don't have a car, if you're working all day, you can still apply for help on your phone, like on the way to work.
We want to target the working families, and so there's not a lot of moms that can take a whole day off of work to come to submit an application for Angel Tree. We're spending less time sitting down, working through individual applications with people. We're spending less time in an interview process. We don't have to tell a person, they don't have to come see us 3 or 4 different times because they keep forgetting documents. They can do all that on the front end so that we can spend more time, effectively talking to people about what their actual needs are. We can spend more time with those Pathway of Hope families, being a little bit more intentional in their situations.